I went to visit family this Thanksgiving season, and while I spent the week decompressing, enjoying the company of loved ones, and stuffing my face with turkey, I also got a chance to read Our Story, a memoir of love and life in China by Rao Pingru, and it broke my heart. Here's why. Mr. Pingru is 96 years old and still living in Shanghai, China. He wrote this memoir shortly after the death of his wife, who he had spent 60 years married to. In it, he tells their story, a story that starts in 1922 and continues all the way through to 2008 when the couple was parted in death. It's a story of enduring love, of marriage, the kind that works, and indirectly, the story of life in 20th century China. Pingru's memoir is littered with his own hand-painted illustrations of his life's journey, from his childhood years learning to write, to his time serving in the National Revolutionary Army, through marriage, children, and over 20 years separated from his family as he was forced into re-education through labor at middle age, even the later years after returning home, as his wife slowly succumbed to illness. Every major life moment of Pingru's existence is painted for us to see. As I read through the story, I was struck by the simple and plain-spoken style with which Pingru writes. He's not a flowery historian. He doesn't pepper the narrative with over-the-top cliches or pontificate like so many writers today do about the wind on their face or the birds singing from the trees. Instead, he tells you what happened, when, where, and how. This blunt way of telling the tale cuts away everything but the memories. Real, raw, at times vulnerable, and taken as a whole, a beautiful recollection of the ups and downs as one reaches the sunset of good days and stands on the twilight of this vale of tears we call life. Looking back at fairer days and brighter climes often means memories will come in bits and pieces, and with this book, it's no different. While many a veteran might have written several pages of war stories, battles, and great victories, Pingru instead speaks of his deployment with equal measures of both combat and quiet moments. When recounting a leave of absence to return home, he focuses on the one memory that seemed to stick out to him the most. In his hurry to leave the front lines, he accidentally mixed together his boots with those of another man in his battalion, only realizing his mistake after having left the camp and noticing his right boot was tighter than the other. With nothing to be done, he put up with the discomfort the entire journey home. This small memory adds nothing to the overarching narrative of the book, but to be true, there is no overarching narrative. A recollection of life is often nothing but these moments that, for whatever reason, stay with us through the years. Consider this memory, the first he had of his wife when they were children, details and images he has kept in his heart for some 70 years. Mitang and I knew each other as children because our families were old friends, but we met only on 2 occasions. The first time we met was soon after Mitang and her family had arrived in the French concession of Hankow, and they went to visit relatives in the county of Nanchang. On their way back, they dropped in on us. I remember her getting out one of my toys and showing her how it worked. She was 10 years old. After we moved, he writes, she and her family came again, this time for dinner. However, I had eaten early and was in a hurry to be off. That was in the countryside in those days. There were no lights on the country roads, and we took torches. Just as I was leaving, I passed by the room where the family was eating and saw Mitang. She was still a child, and a small, slight one at that, so someone had put a stool on top of the chair to raise her up so she could reach the table. Sometime later, Mitang told me that she remembered seeing me then, too. You had a torch, she recalled, and you were flashing it, on and off. She was 13. As Pingru himself writes, for ordinary people, life is made up of numbers of small details that stay with us for no particular reason, and, with the passing of time, turn into treasured memories. For what it's worth, it helps that the author has such a keen visual memory. I was struck by just how clearly this almost century-year-old man could recall the structural layout of his wife's family's residence or his own childhood home in Nanchang County. It's easy to tell why he was often in charge of designing maps during his enlistment. Food is a recurring motif. In a 21st century driven by restaurant chains and fast food conglomerates, I wasn't expecting just how many memories a man of the previous century made in family-owned mom-and-pop diners and dance halls. Several pages are dedicated to reminiscing about certain meals the couple shared together at certain places during uncertain times. What extraordinary adventures these two self-proclaimed ordinary people shared together through the years. If you're like me and looking for an authentic story, one that will transport you to a far-off land and into a far-off time to see how things used to be, to feel, simultaneously for a stranger and yourself, to get a brief bird's-eye view of a life well lived, of a marriage laid plainly before all who are willing to consider it, I hope this illustrated memoir will eventually make it into your hands, as it did mine. I've been married for 16 months. I have a lot to learn as a husband, and maybe one day as a father. Rachel and I seem to just be starting on our journey together. I don't know what's in store for us, though we both know we'll have our share of blissful moments, rocky days, and times of loss. All lives, after all, are a tragedy in their own way, a full course of suffering littered with slices of joy, and consumed while on a quest for contentment. Pingru muses toward the end of the story about the words pasted across the lintel of his grandmother's bedroom door: happiness, long life, good health, and peace. In old age, he tells us, that's all people want, and have always wanted. I'm glad to have read this book when I did, and I'm glad to have read it while the author is still living. And if by some chance he manages to see this, I wish him well. And I thank him for sharing this story so that a man like me, who has found his Mitang, can cherish the time he has with her. This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service that offers over 2,000 documentaries and nonfiction titles from some of the world's best filmmakers, including exclusive originals. For just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited access, but they're letting me hook you up with 30 days for free if you sign up at curiositystream.com/AustinMcConnell and use the promo code AustinMcConnell during the sign-up process. It's available worldwide. You can access it over the web through smart TVs and other services like Kindle, Chromecast, and Apple TV. If you're curious, check it out and start streaming their awesome collection today.